of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday night, which means it's time to live stream, and it's usually a team list Tuesday, but today it is a bye-week Tuesday, and I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, here to navigate the trials and tribulations that come with the week off for the Parramatta Eels, mate. And joining me to break down a week that entails not a great deal of much is my good mate Sixties, a.k.a. Craig, the big fella. Yeah, we're here to talk some football. The big fella. Here to talk some football alongside our live chat, who are always great company. And yeah, there's not much doing for the Eels this week, mate, but it doesn't mean there's a bit to talk about. And so we're going to unpack all of that very shortly. But as always, before I do, check in on you. And hello to chat. Salutations to everyone that's been in there asking me and everyone else a few questions about the state of things, the Dylan Walker rumour, which we're going to address on the docket as well, Craig. But, mate, how you doing?
Yeah, mate, I thought I was going to get washed away this afternoon. I was driving when that downpour came, and I thought, the great flood has started.
Bit of inclement weather,
as soon as it started, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But apart from that, I said to you last week, I was really ready for the bye, like the supporters probably needed it more than the players, and I'm still standing by that, mate. I originally, a few weeks back, I thought when it came to the schooner of reality that I might have targeted the powers that be for having buys in the draw that I know they can't be avoided, but I hate buys normally. This year, I'm loving it.
My pet peeve with buys, and it's not going to go away, is why are they included on the ladder settings? Since everyone's going to have a buy, why do we even pretend that the buy makes a difference on the settings so that some people can be in the 8 or not in the 8 based on their win and loss percentage? But yeah, it's the buy is much needed here, as much for the Eels as it is for fans, and Parramatta a chance to get right and get more than a few troops back on the other side as they look to take on the Knights in round 13. But geez, the fans needed it, mate. It has been a battle. Again, the injuries, the issues on the field that have pertained to that and beyond. But there's a lot of reasons going into that one that fans have been very vocal about. And yeah, like you said, Craig, it's just nice to be able to sit back and say, you know what, no football for a few days. Only a few days though, because it turns around very, very quickly.
It certainly does, and I'm sure the players are grateful for it. I think they've mostly been given some time off. I know there's players who have been given time off, but they're just going in there and continuing to work, and that's not really a surprise, is it? So, yeah. But anyway, John, we've got, even though it's the bye, geez, we've still got plenty to talk about tonight. And before we do, of course, the usual acknowledgements, no matter what platform that you're watching this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, that would be great. If you share, let people know about the podcast, even better. Since we've been out with our content on the different platforms, but of course the website, it's always relied on word of mouth. Just people enjoying what content we make. So if you're able to share it, fantastic. It's much appreciated. Of course, the other thing is to thank our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, the OG of sponsors, Greg and the team. Greg is such a passionate Parramatta man, and we've long appreciated his support, because basically without his support in the first instance, we wouldn't have been able to grow as a website and content creators. So we appreciate that. And, of course, the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And I think it might be this weekend coming that they've got their or it's very soon. Get onto the website. I should have done a little bit of prep on this, but they've got like a food truck festival that's happening there, and it goes for an entire weekend. So it's something to be investigated, just get onto the Parramatta League's website. That'll give you all the details about the food vendors that are there and the hours that it operates by. But I was looking at it and thinking, you know what? I think this might be a good one to get to. So make sure you support the club that owns the Parramatta Eels. And John, I think that's about it. We're just about ready to go to the Stinger.
That's it.
News team, assemble!
And apologies, you hear my keyboard clicking, clacking away. I've changed keyboards recently, and it's back to a mechanical set of keys, which gives you that clickety clack. So I'll try to minimise the sound coming through.
It's not your bones creaking, mate.
No. Let's see. Oh, we get a little bit. It's not too bad, though. Not too bad.
There we go. That almost leapt through the screen there. I hope you haven't frightened too many listeners away or viewers away.
Popping the old nitrogen gas in between the joints. There you go.
John, I wanted to start just with the punting story that I teased you about. I teased listeners about recently because there was a Parramatta punter that in that game against North Queensland had the Eels to win by 1 point, and he got some extraordinary odds. I think it was something like 680 to 1 or something like that. Anyway, he's had 100 on it. And, of course, when it went to extra time and Moses kicked the field goal, he's done the big celebration around the house. The wife's joined in the celebrations. He's counting the coin that's going to be in the pocket for whatever purpose he wants to put that money to. And anyway, in the celebrations, his wife's just gone and booked a holiday for the two of them to Greece. And he's then come back to the television later and seen that the score was 33-30. And all that cash that was coming his way was no more. And from what I'm told, at the last time I spoke to the fella that filled me in on the story, who knows the bloke, and I believe his nickname is Crank, the fellow that it's happened to, the wife still wasn't told that he hadn't got the money.
Oh.
So, and when I was told the story, I said, "Are you serious? Is this fair income?" And my source said to me, "Yes, I was first told by his brother, and then I was told by the man himself." And he said, when you saw the look of pain on his face as he's relating the story, you know that it's fair income. So I thought my story of back in Gutho at hundreds to win the Dally M back in 2017 was a hard luck story where I had a fair crack at the market at 100 to 1, and I was almost counting the cash when he got to round 20, round 21, whenever it was that he suffered the ACL and he was a point behind Cam Smith.
I know you said he went away from the game after he thought he got the 1-pointer, but he would have been riding Mitchell Moses arguing with Liam Kennedy every second if he'd been watching it.
Yeah. You can imagine the drama of that.
Oh, no.
The ag, what are they doing? No. Just kick it dead. Like, don't even worry about the point. Yeah. So sad punting tale. I guess punter beware when it comes to betting on any event, let alone the football. So anyway, let's get into it, John. Peter Sterling, New South Wales Rugby League Hall of Fame.
Yeah, not quite the immortal campaign that we've been barracking for. Obviously, still one of a number of Eels that would have been a worthy inclusion in their ranks. But, geez, how was he not in there? Was that some sort of clerical oversight? Hello? Peter Sterling?
Yeah.
He's getting inducted in the same year as who was it? Who was the other one that went in the class this year? It was like a player that's just retired recently.
Yeah.
Where is the He's going with Boyd Cordner.
Yeah.
What? What?
So Boyd Cordner has no doubt, because I think one of the qualifications is retired for 5 years, at least 5 years.
That's the classic Hall of Fame induction requirements is 5 years retired.
So was that about 5 years ago that Boyd Cordner retired, or was it a little bit longer?
When did Boyd Cordner pull up the stumps? Because he went early in his career because he obviously had some issues with concussions. Cordner retired in 2020. So it's just on 5 years, yeah.
Yeah. I guess it will be the case maybe when we get one of those 1980s Eels players that is made into an immortal, and we hope that will actually be the case. But it does seem like it for Sterlo, it's been an oversight for a long period of time.
That's crazy, yeah.
That someone who was so instrumental, and they talk about the achievements in 1986 there. That's now 40 years ago, let alone, and that wasn't the first time he pulled on, by a long shot, the Blues jersey. But what can you say? At least the honours have come his way, and no doubt he's a very proud man to have those honours come his way from the New South Wales Rugby League. But so maybe let's just focus on the positive rather than what it takes so long. You know that his exploits for the Eels are obviously legendary, but being able to be part of the first New South Wales Origin clean sweep series was big for him. Being part of the American experiment the first time with Origin when they first went there, he was a revelation as a halfback, and the team was able to, and he just had that right team around him at Parramatta that allowed him to be who he was as a player. And what we see, and if we use a current day player, Nathan Cleary is in the NRL era I would suggest the best club halfback that I've seen. It hasn't quite manifested at Origin level.
Yeah.
But Sterlo, it manifested at Origin level. It manifested at international level. I remember when I think it was the '82 Kangaroo Tour, and Frank Stanton, I believe, off the top of my head, was the coach, and the players that went over as the halves combination was, I think, Steve Mortimer and Wally Lewis. And the Eels had just come off back-to-back premierships, and Frank Stanton went with Peter Sterling and Brett Kenny, and the rest is history. It was a big call for him as the Australian coach to not go with the incumbents, especially someone like Wally Lewis, leaving him out. But I think that it ended up proving to be a masterstroke. But anyway, well done to Peter Sterling. And I think as Eels fans, we all feel that bit of pride as well, knowing that he is getting that recognition. I was fortunate enough to have a bit of time with Steve Ella and Peter Sterling at that 40-year celebration a few weeks ago. And just being, it was funny, like to be part of the conversation, like as I'm talking to the two of them, but then you almost sit back and listen as the two of them have their conversation as well, like throwing little bits of banter to each other. It was like, but it was almost like being a fly on the wall of what it would have been like to be around those players when they were teammates. And that for me was a real bucket list moment, John, being able to be in the presence of those two as they were interacting as mates. And just Very, very happy that that opportunity came my way. Let's now move on to current day. Sunday marked the return of 2 Eels first grade players in the New South Wales Cup game against the Dragons at North Sydney Oval. So we had Gideon Katonga and Isaiah Iongi. Iongi just played the first half.
Yep.
Gideon was left out there for the entire game. What were your thoughts on the respective performances of those two fellas?
Look, it was a strange game. In many ways, it was a mirror of what we saw in the NRL, where there was a lot of errors on both sides of the ball. But in the NRL, the Parramatta Eels absolutely refused to take advantage of numerous attacking opportunities. In this game, we saw the Eels actually capitalise, and it really shaped the entire narrative of that game from there, which probably wouldn't be too dissimilar to what would have happened in the NRL if the Eels just scored a couple of times amidst all those other chances. But yeah, look, I thought that Iongi was very classy. Played 40 minutes, had 10 carries, got nearly 130 metres, looked pretty lethal. He's got a really nice try. Was it the outside-inside, playing down to the right edge there. So he looked like he barely missed a beat, which was fantastic. On the other side, Katonga, a little bit rougher. I think there were a couple errors in there, but again, that was really the flow of the game was very choppy. You saw a couple of really strong carries, but it wasn't as dominant as you would have hoped, especially like you look back to what Jordan Samrani did, where that was a clear message being sent that I'm ready, pick me. And look, I'm not saying that Katonga shouldn't be in NRL selection consideration on the back of it, but 11 carries, 125 metres, a couple of tackle busts. What do you get through defensively? You got through 22 tackles, 3 missed, so relatively neat defensive work on the edge there. And then you got charged with 3 errors, which did lead the team, which is, again, that's what I saw on the tape when I finally caught up and watched the game. And, he had some moments where he tried to force offloads or just had a loose carry. And no surprises that it's been reflected in the error stats there. But he wasn't terrible. Like, it's not like, oh, my God, what are we going to do with him? It was just he had his moments, and then he had some bad moments.
He was put on report.
Oh, you're right about that, yes. Chris is in chat. He might be able to illuminate us on what the end charge was, or if he's able to. But I'm just trying to look at where is the ticket stuff here.
AJ sent me something yesterday. I think he expected that he'd be right to play.
Okay. So he's not doing any hip dropping or something like that. I got Pez in danger the week before. I'm just looking through the game, what's it called? The game center, the match center, the incident reports. I can't see anything, but it could be all the way back. So I'm not seeing anything there. And if AJ told you he's not too worried, then it's probably a good sign that, oh, there it is. It was in the 74th minute on report. Yeah, it doesn't specify what the charge is. So yeah. Look, the two.
I was going to say, John, I thought it was a bit of a mixed bag for him.
Yeah,
it was. I think with the forced passes, it's just where I think Gideon gets a little bit ahead of himself at times. He sees an opportunity, and he'll see it if there's only, I think, sometimes 25% chance.
I think he thought he was playing with the Fox later in the game as well. There was a pass, which it wasn't a bad pass in terms of like the concept, but he was playing with Moe Al-Madine, who he's a good young winger, but he had the Fox in terms of speed, and that pass was thrown for an absolute flyer down the sideline. Look, it also worth remembering he's been out for a while. Like I know Iongi looked classy and he looked fine, but not every player comes back from injury without having the dust off the cobwebs and shave off the rust. And in this case, he had some cobwebs and rust to get rid of. So he'll be better for the run. I'm not too pressed about what I saw, Craig, because it was still, despite not dominating, he still got to 125 metres from 10 carries, a couple of tackle breaks. It's not terrible. But beyond that, there were some interesting performances across the park. I don't know if you want to... Just before
you go on to other people, I think the performances were reflected in the minutes that they had, that the coach had them play.
Yeah, Iongi got out.
Iongi played just the half. Gideon was given the full hit out. So
there was
I think they felt he needed the hit out.
Young was like McLaren in qualifying, goes out in the low fuel load, smashes out a great lap, and then gets parked in the garage until the next qualifying race, because he did all he needed to do in the first half. Whereas unfortunately for Katonga, he's probably a bit more like I was trying to think. They're not kicks out anymore, but you've got one of the back end or back markers that had a bit more work to be done, and he needs a bit more tuning before he goes into that game in round 13. But he'll be better for it. That's exactly why they sent him out there. People were asking why we not aggressively, but they're asking guys coming off an injury why we put him in the reserve grade with the bye there. That's why, so he can work through some stuff, get a feel for the game under his belt again, and he'll be much better for it. In terms of other performances, mate, look, the Eels won this game 20-12. The Dragons are a good outfit. They're they were top 4 on the ladder. I'm not sure where they stand after this result. They dropped the 5th as a result. So, it was a good win for the Eels. Good performance, despite the errors and the weird flow of the game. There were some good performances across the park. The back line was very productive, mate. Araz Nava leading the way. He hit 236 metres off 22 carries. So, tremendous effort there from the young centre. He had a few tackle busts, and defensively he was tidy enough, which is good to see for a young 3-quarter. But then, elsewhere in the back line, Moe Al-Madine was very productive. He went to nearly 190 metres off his 20 carries. Tiankin Brown was probably the pick of the forwards in terms of his involvements and meterage. But the player that I really liked off the bench, and his numbers, they're good. They're not incredible, but they're good. 9 carries for 97 metres, 3 tackle breaks. And then defensively, he got through, where is he over here? He got through 27 tackles with just the 1 miss, which is awesome to see for a young bull, right at Twangy. And if you watch that game, and I know you did, Craig, so I'm just saying, proposing as a rhetorical here, if you'd watch that game, you'd see he was falling forwards for all the contact as well. Like, he was really, really winning those collisions, which was great to see. And I think that's a big step forwards for the young men there. And I think he'll, it's not necessarily on the horizon just yet, but I think he's working towards a cup of coffee in the NRL at some point. He is starting to build a nice little portfolio of results under his belt there.
2 players I wanted to get more specific thoughts on, Harrison Edwards and Jonah Pezzett.
Yeah, so Harrison Edwards started at dummy half and then switched back to lock forward when Cruz Natili Schmidt came on, I believe, was the way he went through. Obviously, be powered for a mountain of work in defence. 53 tackles, 3 missed, 1 ineffective. So, great production, great efficiency on defence, which is really good to see. Especially
that was one of the things he was renowned for.
That's right. He was billed as a defensive back rower, very consistent in that regard. Obviously, it's only 1 game as a Parramatta Eel, but he's lived up to that billing in the 80 minutes he's played for the Eels. Looked pretty tidy around dummy half. Had some nice darts. Had some nice involvements with the spine. Pezzett and Arpatwidal, when he moved back to fullback with a Yongi going to hit the ice bars early, had some nice moments around the ruck there. So liked what I saw there. Looks like he's going to be a pretty competent back rower / dummy half for us. Probably going to maybe shape some of role selection decisions moving forwards in that regard. If he wants to go with different bench or rotation setups in a given contest, he can lean more on one hooker and then use Harrison Edwards as a potential back row cover and dummy half cover if needed, which is really nice to have in the pocket. And then Jonah Pezzett. I thought Pezzett was pretty good. Just trying to think. Probably the only real knock on him was the goal kicking. He missed a couple of early shots, one of which I thought was close to not a throw over, but relatively straightforward.
It wasn't far off, yeah.
No. But yeah, he looked really good. Not saying it was perfect, but he had nice involvements. He played the primary half to Lorenzo Talataina, and Lorenzo had his moments, but also you could see maybe he was pressing a little bit this week. A couple of down that left edge, they had a few errors combined between him and obviously Kitiana Katonga. But yeah, I thought Pezzett was really solid and probably a good time to put your hand up for some solid work, given that a bit of the conversation has been focused on Ronald Volkman in the NRL now and some of the issues he's had in the last couple of weeks, mostly in defence. I think offensively he's been pretty tidy. And
defensively, what was Pezzett's stats?
Yeah, so Jonah Pezzett was charged with 22 tackles and 6 missed, 2 ineffective. So not the cleanest defensive sheet there. But they went after him, so he got for a lot of tackles, 73.33% effective tackle rate. So not great. It's not great, but they got a lot of tackling into him, nearly 30 attempted tackles there. So that I don't know if that swings the needle either way. Then Craig, if he's going to have defensive lapses in Reggie's, how much does that weigh against Volkman having defensive lapses in first grade? I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be. It might even just come down to who trains better in the head-to-head there in this coming week, or sorry, the week after this, in the run to that Knights game, because I'm not sure if Riles has unquestionable reason to pick either player to partner Moses, or God help us if Moses doesn't back up from State of Origin. Then
that's not.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be resting him like certain other coaches can afford to do with their own players. So what I wanted to ask you, John, for your opinion on this, coming into our next game, you're going to have the Gideon, Isaiah, Pezzett, Jonah Pezzett. You're going to have
maybe Sam.
Harrison Edwards. Then you're going to have maybe Sam, maybe Will, maybe Riley, probably Riley available. So how many of those do you think Riles selects, and who makes way for them? I think it's a real we noted a couple of weeks ago that round 13 was going to present some interesting calls for Jason Riles. And I think, and we also suggested that with the players that are coming back, that round 13 was our magic round. It's as close as we are. If all of those players are available, that's really as close as we're going to get to full strength for this season, given the other players that are out for the duration of the season. That's pretty close to the best that you'd be able to name. So he's got close to his maximum number of players that he can choose from. So I think unless he's got any of those players that he thinks, no, I want them to have a run in New South Wales Cup before I consider it, he's got the ball's in Jason Riles' court, and it might be a pointer towards who he's going to use for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So what do you think he's going to do?
I mean, no-brainer.
Not what you do, John.
No, not what I do, but what the coach would do. Exactly. There is obviously a distinct difference. The no-brainer one, Yongi comes in at fullback. I think that just, he's the first choice fullback. He'll come in. That then maybe opens up some interesting avenues to do something else with Joash, pending, does he start competing at 5'8"? Does he become a utility option on the interchange? That's an extrapolation I'm not sure if I'm ready to make. But
it's interesting that you say that, John, because before I was saying, what do you think of Pezzett's performance? Because he is probably going to come into consideration when Origin is on to play halfback. So maybe Riles houses him playing halfback and only halfback in New South Wales Cup moving forward the next couple of weeks to have him dialed in on that position. But there hasn't been anything wrong with what Joash has provided for the Eels in first grade, and I would contend that he must come into part of the talk of 5'8", but at the very least, John, he's going to own a spot on the bench, on the interchange.
Yep. So that's a straightforward one. I would have to imagine if he is able to push through the osteitis pubis, that Will Penasini is in the centres, then what that means is that there's an interesting battle at left centre now between Sean Russell and Jordan Samrani. One is a specialist left centre. One prefers playing on the right in terms of where he's being picked for the Eels, but he's the one that's going to beat the Eels next year. So how pragmatic are we in terms of team selections there? How pragmatic is Jason Riles?
I had a very good, John. Can I just say in the case of Will Penasini, I had a very good judge of football suggest to me in a left field observation that he thinks Will Penasini might be best served by a positional switch to back row. That he's got the power running game, and that he's maybe his pace isn't quite at that centre level now, but he's got the power and that capacity to beat players that would make him valuable in a running back rower's position.
I don't disagree. It just doesn't make sense for the Eels. You've got Jaden Sewer coming. You've got Katonga. You've got Williams. You've got a couple other young back rows that you're looking to bring through. If that's the case, you'd be better moving on from Will Penasini if that was your stance. But as we believe, he's signed the contract. So, well, at least that's our understanding, is that he's signed an extension that hasn't been put to public by the club, because he himself announced it in the presser last year. But yeah, if Will's back, I imagine Riles will pick him again, because we're looking at this through the lens of what the coach will do. So I think that the coach picks him, and then that opens up that interesting battle at left centre between the player that is the incumbent in Russell, and then Jordan Samrani, the player that's going to be here, as opposed to Sean leaving the club. So maybe there's going to be a selection drama there, and he goes with Samrani. That one I'm not sure of. While Riles has largely been a pragmatic coach in terms of selection and recruitment, we've also seen there are times when he can favour incumbency and players that have done the job for him. So I would lean towards maybe Samrani getting the crack there if Will's healthy on the right. But that's your backline sort of quote unquote solved there. I think in terms
Can I throw it to our chat room, and you might be able to report back to me, John, after a little while. We'll see what they say. Who would they select as their two centres? So I'm even going to throw into the mix that they might consider not selecting Will and going with Sean and Jordan Samrani.
I don't think Russell's form's been anything exemplary in recent weeks either, though. It's the problem. So,
well, this is why I'm going to throw it out there. It will. Is it last week's centre, or is it a case of Jordan Samrani is perhaps at the stage where he's the first centre picked? So curious just to what the chat room, what their take on it is, and maybe they could add in a second comment for who is their number 6 for next week as well. So the two centres and the 5'8", what their choice is. Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, continue on now with the forwards, John.
Yeah, forwards, look, I think I said it in the Instant Reaction podcast, or maybe I said it to some mates, I can't remember. It all blurs together when you have a loss as frustrating as the one we had on Saturday night. But if we're going to start, and I know people can argue whether he started a prop or played lock, but if you're going to have the combination of Jack DeBellin and Geimer, where one is lock and one is prop, then you might as well put Sam Tuivasa in to start a prop. And if Sam's healthy, the only thing that I think would preclude him from playing starting minutes of prop would be the fact he's been out for 3-4 weeks now. So, again...
So what do you think Riles will do?
I think Riles probably plays it safe at prop forward, which is unfortunate. But I would like to see Sam start, but I think he'll probably go with... If not... Because now I'm trying to figure out the rest of the bench composition here. Because Katonga probably starts on the edge, which bumps Kelmer to the bench. And Harrison Edwards is going to be on the bench. So you've got... This is where it gets a little tricky because you're trying to juggle.
So if he's got Harrison Edwards on the bench, he's only going to have one dummy half. So either Riley Smith or Talon De Silva is going to be playing New South Wales Cup.
And one of Riles' comments in the post-match presser when he was asked about positives from the game was he did make specific mention of Talon De Silva getting through 80 minutes again, and he thought he looked all right. So maybe it's the balls and talents court here. I don't know. He's been the player that's been available, which of course is always a huge asset as a player that's competing for timeshare. But Edwards almost certainly goes onto the 6-man bench. I could see an argument for Geimer and Saxon Pryke just to get some rotation into New South Wales Cup, and that sort of opens the way for Edwards to come in, and then obviously Sam's coming back into the fold too. And then the player that I think deserves a spot on the bench there is Tony Mattelli. I think he's been very impressive in the last few weeks. So that's sort of where I would be thinking as Riles, but there's some big unknowns in that whole conversation where I'm not really certain if he's going to be very pragmatic, take the safe option, take a gamble. It's tough.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, John, because I didn't think Talon was as good last week as he was the week before, and I wasn't sure that some of the options that he went for were the correct options. I think he might have been at loggerheads with Mitch in terms of Mitch wanting a couple of times where he would have wanted the ball and Talon went the other way. Now that's not. I'm not bagging Talon in any way, because I think we've started to see some of the promise that he's got, but I think there are aspects of that game where we probably missed Riley's service there. So I've just got the feeling that we're not going to see two dummy halves in the 17 anymore because of the recruitment of Harrison Edwards.
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying for certain that Harrison Edwards gets selected this week either, because it may be that he'll keep him up his sleeve to have a look at him a bit later. He might want him to play a couple of games in New South Wales Cup to really get up to speed with the calls and what and with the Eels systems. But I think it does make it a real contest then between De Silva and Smith as to which one's going to get the spot. And up to now, we've had almost universally Riley starting and Talon getting whatever minutes were made available to him, depending on the flow of the game. Injury gives other people an opportunity, doesn't it? And you don't always want to give people that opportunity. I hope it doesn't mean that Riley's back in New South Wales Cup, because I think he's got plenty to offer as an NRL player, but we'll soon see what decision Riles makes. I've got no idea what he's going to do, but I do suspect that the time of two dummy halves in the 17 might be coming to an end. Like you, I agree about Tony Mattelli. I think he's shown the value of the big man still in the pack. So whether he's retained in the 17, we'll see. What about chat? What was the consensus there for those positions?
Oh, one sec. So there's some varying thoughts across the 3 and 4 position there. Let me just roll back up to when you posed the question. Where are we? Because I saw that there. Because Adam Neal was in there as a first-time chatter, which was great to have him on the potty here tonight. Thanks, mate. And he also put in some thoughts on that setup, which I'll get to shortly. So we'll start with Jamie says, honestly, Sam Riney and Rusty. So he's thinking along your lines there. Mike Formosa says Penasini and Jordan. JJ says Will Araz, which I believe is the centre setup, because then he says Jordan on the wing, which would be the right wing there, I would imagine, given that the Fox is on the left. And then we got Chris saying Samrani and Russell. And who else do we have we can use? Well, there is Narva there, which he had a big game in Cup there. And I imagine he'll probably get some runs at some point this season. But, yeah, that's, again, a question for the coach in terms of how much does he prioritise a player like Narva to develop as opposed to someone like Russell, who will be perceived to be the more NRL-ready prospect right now. And then we've got some follow-up comments there saying, Chris says, Money for 5/8. Am I missing? Who would Money be? At 6. You got Pezzett, you got Volkman, and you got Joash. Chris, you might have to clarify unless you've put a comment in after. I'm not sure about that one there, but JJ says Joash at 6. Michael says Joash at 6, so there's definitely some consensus there. Jetta says Samrani and Russell. Mitchie wants Lorenzo at 6, so he wants the young blood in there. We got Jamie saying he thinks Pezzett, Volks were shocking last week. Yeah, that's definitely been a talking point. While Volkman's done some good stuff offensively, obviously against the Storm, it didn't come off in that regard either, but defensively he's been on a real struggle lately. Gonza says Pezzett, Samrani, Russell, which is obviously your 6 and your 3 centres there. Three centres, your 3 quarters. Sue says Josh at 6. Beaker says Nanva and Samrani to wing. Nanva and Samrani and then Russell to wing, and then Josh at 6. Who else we got here? Neil says Josh at 6, Pez at 7. Okay, so he's talking about he's worried about Mitch getting hurt backing up, so he's going to just sack Mitch's selection of the team entirely and just go Josh 6, Pez at 7. And then Adam, who is a first-time chatter, again says he would go Penasini and Jordan and then give Josh a 6. So Luke says Nanva and Samrani. He wants to move on from Will, which, again, nothing wrong with that opinion. That's like I said to you, Craig, I feel like it's either you move on from Will or you play him. Either way, you fall on that coin. I don't think, there are merits on either side there, but I don't think you convert him to back rower the way the Eels are set up. David wants to see Williams stay on the edge, which is in line with what I was saying with Katonga taking over from Kelmer. Bondi Shane is pushing for Lorenzo to start with Pezzett. Again, I imagine it's in a scenario where Mitch doesn't back up from Origin. And then Luke says Josh at 5/8. Johnny says Yongi to 6, Pezzett 7. Yongi 1, 6 is Pezzett, 7 is Moses, and Josh is a backup. Sorry about that, Johnny. Chris says Yongi 1, Pezzett 6, Moses 7. And he's got Smith starting. With Walker, De Silva, and Edwards on the bench. So he's going for the super utility bench there, is Chris. And then there were some people saying, Charlie could use a spell, which I don't disagree with. I feel like he's pushing through a bit of a spell right now where he's, if you watch him in Reggie's, he's better than Reggie's. And he's just not quite there at NRL right now. And it's that really tricky period of his development where he's just got to find that extra gear. And I think he could use just a bit more time in Cup right now just to reset, which is not a bad thing. And, that's the general thoughts there. And there's people asking about Lincoln Fletcher and his status. The Eels are on the bye this week, but he was due back in round 12. So there is no football across the 21s, Reggie's or NRL for him to play. Otherwise, he would probably be in action. And he is primarily, and when I mean primarily, I mean heavily primarily a halfback. But he has spent a little bit of time at fullback for Australian schoolboys and coming through the grades, but he is a 7.
Yeah. And he was probably borderline being okay to have played last week, but Flegg were on a global bye. Mm-hmm. So there was no point there, and they weren't going to push him into New South Wales Cup.
Ice cold into New South Wales Cup, exactly.
Yeah. So another week off, it's not going to hurt a hamstring injury at all. So moving on, John, there's that Dylan Walker rumour that's been going around now. We're not ones to talk about rumours. We get sent that many rumours. It's ridiculous. This one's just had a little bit of traction out there. I can't add anything to it, to be honest. I can't say dismiss it, but I'll tell you where I find it strange. I find it strange, first of all, that we got Dylan Walker on compassionate grounds, his desire to come back to Australia. And now there's talk about him going to the English Super League. Well, that's a hell of a lot further than New Zealand in terms of proximity to family. So that feels a little bit strange. Would it surprise me that he would have his agent talking that up?
Yeah, I mean,
it may well be that he's trying to get a deal out of Parramatta. How would I think someone like Dylan Walker has enjoyed his time at Parramatta, despite the fact that we're not travelling that great. He's got a very defined role in our attacking plays. He's central to a lot of it. And if there's one thing, even though we struggled a bit against the Storm, we've scored tries against some of the defences that have been much vaunted this year. So I think there's still a role for Dylan Walker at the Eels. I'm hoping that there's still a role there, unless we get some sort of signing that's like right out of the blue that would necessitate that he's additional to our needs. But yeah, I don't know if you've heard anything, John, that
AJ's in chat saying that the source, the UK source, the journal it's reporting, it's pretty consistent. Like, this isn't, at least insofar as him being shopping around the UK, there is substance to it, which
yes,
it's part of the process, obviously. I dare say it's trying to elicit a stronger counteroffer from the club. I was in chat earlier while we were in the green room, Craig, just typing out some of my thoughts on this to people that were asking me, and it's I don't know, it's a real delicate one, because there is no doubt that right now and for next year, Dylan Walker makes us a better team, and that in terms of like your retention priorities, you absolutely would frame your contract around a 1 year plus maybe sort of option, and maybe not too dissimilar to what you got with Jack DeBellin, where it's a 1+1 of a club option. But Walker's camp would obviously be wanting way more job security. They'd want 2, maybe 3 years on paper locked in, so he's like, last good NRL contract set in stone. And that, the dance goes around that. And it is tricky, because I know there's other factors here, like if you lose Walker, can you go get a player of equal substance or better to replace him? And that's obviously part of that overarching conversation about recruitment right now. But you've also got to balance that against Walker right now, and Walker of 2027 are obviously going to be net positives for the team. But Dylan Walker in 2028 and Dylan Walker in 2029, is he going to be a net positive, or is he going to be a player that's holding back a Jackson Coiner or someone like that that's coming through? So there is, while overwhelmingly there is the prevailing theory would be from fans to keep him, there is at least a little bit of nuance here. Like, I don't want the Eels to just throw a 3-year contract on the table just because he's shopping around at the ESL. I feel like there has to be a middle ground here around that 2-year sort of time frame. But if he wants more than that, and that's entirely his prerogative, like, that's not me being, saying he's a mercenary. This is absolutely the sort of time in his career where you want to try and lock in a 3-year deal if you can. It gets really tough for the Eels, because as much as we want to bemoan our recruitment, and again, very reasonable to complain about recruitment, this is that nuanced situation where you are weighing off the long-term consequences against the short-term gains.
Yeah, there's so much talk that's going on about recruitment. I had my say, I think it was, 3 weeks ago now, with a video about the Eels needing to bite the bullet and being prepared to spend a bit more than they have in the past, because of the fact that we sit down the bottom end of the table. We're not, unfortunately, there's so much that should make the Eels an attractive destination for players. But if you're not offering a top-of-the-table team for them to join, and you're being, I guess, frugal's not the right word, because I don't think it's a case of being frugal. I think if you're paying market price for a player, they're not going to come to a club. Like, let's be realistic. They're not going to come to a club that's sitting down near the bottom of the table and is offering to pay market price, or just not competing with the bigger offers. We're at the point where the Eels have to be prepared to open the checkbook for specific targets. Now, you said this is where it gets hard with someone like Dylan Walker.
It's the same conversation with Junior Barlow, where Junior, in terms of the club's perspective, it's got to be 1-year deals. And I imagine the club would be in a similar mindset of Dylan, but his camp would be on the opposite, saying, hey, we want 2 or 3 years. So...
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent way of framing this, John, that the Eels will be looking at certain senior players and going, look, from here on in, we're going to talk one-year deals. And I think that's perfectly reasonable of the Eels to go down that path. And if people get upset that some veteran players might move on as a result of that, I think that's one of those big calls that the Eels have to make, because anyone will tell you in the recruitment business for rugby league and putting a roster together, you are far better served to let a player go a year early rather than a year late. And it's also said with players with retiring, you're far better to retire a year early than a year late. Players that play on that 1 year too long and don't enjoy their football, and they lose all the form, and it becomes that mental struggle for training, and let alone the playing and the media side of it, and not getting the time that they want with family, and all of the things that come with being, well, let's call them personalities, but public, I guess, having a public profile as an elite sports person. So that is part of the juggling act that the Eels have. My stance on all of this is that, yes, you have to have that balance in the roster, but the Eels have to land some bigger fish. And are there the bigger fish out there at the moment? Probably not when it comes to top of the roster players, but there are probably some players that the Eels will be able to look at who maybe sit just below, but in being there, they are still taking the Eels up. They would be adding upper end value, I think, to the roster. And I think,
and
people
while we're still chasing the elite players, you can't neglect those kind of players either that just help build a solid roster.
And to me, they're ones that might even nudge up into being those upper tier players. They're players that have got a lot of upside about them, not ones that are project players, not ones where you can look to like the traditional idea of develop, like they've got a lot of work that they need. I think there's players who don't need much work, who are already trending upwards and are heading up and would be good acquisitions for the club. I'd still like to get an elite senior player or two. When I say senior, I'm talking about someone in their late 20s who I think would add value, not just in terms of what they bring to the Eels in terms of talent, but also leadership as well, like elite level leadership. And that's not a criticism of our current leaders. It's just you'd like to have someone there who's still at the top of their game and has been there and done that in terms of premiership success. I think there's a lot to be said for having that sort of background. And anyway, that's the subject of another discussion, because we'll just go down the path that it just goes on and on and on. I think we know that the players that are there at the moment, it's not going to change for the rest of this season. This has to be something that is sorted going forward. And even if it means that there's recruitment that's done in November for 28 rather than 27, but we start to trend upwards with who we do sign for 27 anyway. So let's move on, John.
In that vein, just quickly, JJ probably asked the question that I would say is probably representative of what a lot of fans are right now, in that what are the Eels after in a player? He says, I don't know what they're doing. They should know this team has a lot of holes in it, not criticise them, just confused. And, yeah, I suppose that is a fair question. What do the Parramatta Eels want in a player? And we know they're deeply in chats of Keon Koloamatangi. So there's one of the players that they've been linked to in recent times. But, yeah, what do the Eels want in a player? Like,
well, Jason Riles said it to everyone in attendance that was there at the start of the year for the Q&A with the coach, for a members Q&A. And he basically said, we need a middle, we need an outside back. Right? So you maybe start to talk about, do you need 2 outside backs, not just one? Do they continue to develop the 5'8", or do they look to go out and purchase a 5'8"? Do they even look at an edge back rower? Is that just Jaden Sewer that's going to play edge? So it's, but I think the absolute musts are a middle, an outside back, maybe even a second middle. But middle and outside back, absolute musts. And then, John, as you say, like we've talked about this before, you could pick up, if the right player came along, you make them fit. Even if it's in a position where you go, oh, look, we're relatively well covered there. If someone came along that was just a must get, then you sign them. You make it work. You just make it work. I've had plenty of people say to me, look, a club like St George, look at the recruitment that they're doing. And I just say, okay, well, they're playing overs for everyone that they've recruited. So it's an example. Yes, that's an example. If you're sitting down near the bottom of the table, you have to pay overs. Would I agree with everyone that they've signed? Probably from their perspective, yeah. Like that, I think that suited their needs. They needed a fullback. They needed a halfback. They needed a middle forward, a dominant middle forward. Bingo. They could even do with a winger. So they, Philip Sammy they recruited as well. So I think their tough decisions now is going to be, who's going to make way? Is it going to be Valentine Holmes? Is it going to be the King, Gutho? Because I don't think they can retain 5 players on around $1 million. That's really and I say that's on average, because we know Keon went there on 1.3. So we know the King must have been around 950 because he was getting about the same as what he got at Parramatta to go to the Dragons. Valentine Holmes would have gone there on big money. We know that they've just picked up the half for, what was it, 900,000 Metcalf, something like that. That's what he signed for, wasn't it?
Metcalf on 360, it's already climbing up to $1 million a season. So
there you go.
Who knows?
And Drinkwater. He's fullback money, mate. That's 900 to $1 million.
900 to $1 million, yeah.
So there you go. It probably comes out when it's all added up, maybe nudging just a bit past $5 million for 5 players.
Yeah,
that's
almost none of whom are genuinely elite
either.
Yeah, like you've got mercurial talent in there. Like Drinkwater, obviously, offensively is outstanding, but he lets in a lot of points too. Like there are issues in his game. He's not a complete player. And that's the problem. Like in chat, people were saying, like, why don't we sign Izako? Why don't we sign Warbrick? Why don't we sign who was the other one? Talangi, Murray Talangi. And they're all fair questions. And I think probably my pick of them would have been Izako because he gives you an experienced option on the wing that's a good goal kicker. But they're also not elite players. They are not roster moving acquisitions. And it's not to say we shouldn't be going after them, but when you're looking for a transcendental signing, you're talking guys like Farnworth. You're talking that caliber of player,
yeah.
or Carrigan in the middle if you could somehow get him out of Brisbane, for instance. We've done that route with going, Blake Ferguson and getting a good player, like a representative-ish caliber back. And you can still do that if the value's right. But increasingly the value isn't right. Like that stuff doesn't line up as often as it used to because of the fact there's more teams in the competition and there's more desperation. But yeah, like I would have been okay with some of those. I wouldn't have touched Warbrick because of the concussions. And Talangi's had some check injury history recently, but he's still a good player. So Talangi and Izako, I would have been happy to see the club sign, but at the same point, they're not roster altering acquisitions, and we've tried to tread that path. And someone was mentioning, I think it was Tim in chat saying the Eels and O'Neill are trying to play Moneyball, and that's become something of a pejorative in sports these days, and it really shouldn't be, because every team should be trying to play Moneyball. Theoretically, you want to try and maximize your output on input. You're trying to find players that have been overlooked in the market on inefficiencies because of either not reading their skill set correctly, or the way the game, reading where the game's going to go, and identifying that we're going to a fast meta or a slow meta in terms of the 6 again or penalties. So Moneyball is perfectly fine. It's just the Eels again haven't pulled the trigger on the big signings, and that's where they've really hurt themselves. But yeah, Jack Bostock's probably a player I would consider an excellent target. Like, he's not proven as a roster alterer, but he's on a nice trajectory, and you could probably take a punt on him. You have to bet on potential, and sign on potential there. But I think that's probably a good bet. And Neil says give Herbie 1.2. Yeah, if we were willing to go up to that or thereabouts for Keon Koloamatangi, and we missed him, sure, let's go 1.1, 1.2 for Herbie. And that might not be good enough to get him, because his market's going to be red hot. But at least have a red hot crack at it. So
Herbie is a match winner. He's elite. He's a match winner. He's a player that you hate seeing in the opponent's team list when you come up against the Dolphins. But that game was it last year that he literally turned the game on his own with the. We'd
actually outplayed them across the park, and it was him that stopped tries and set up tries that carried them to a win.
That's the sort of player that the Eels need to target. Someone who, for want of a better word, we had that for years in Jared Hayne. We just didn't have the cattle around him. We had enough cattle around him in 2009, and it just happened to be that everything clicked in that late run. It didn't click in 2010, and I might contend that the loss of Kevin Kingston was significant in the fall back down the ladder in 2010.
There was also just a huge regression to the mean for a lot of those players. They were not to the similar to what we saw from Canberra last year, and in other teams that got really hot, you just see players go back to who they are career-wise. But, Philly and Jared were playing out of their minds in 2009 as well, which was a huge part of the load.
Yeah. And then you had someone like Folletti, who came in after being injured for a lot of the season, came back in late season, and his little unique skill set just added to what was happening in the style of football that the Eels were playing at that point in the season. So anyway, that's really, getting away from the topic. Let's move on, John, because we could probably talk forever about Eels recruitment.
Until something big happens one way or the other, whether it's players signed or a different direction for the club. You're just going around in circles, aren't you?
Yeah, and we've been talking about it for long enough, and not rubbishing people. And I think this is the important thing, is that there's been the level of recruitment that we've aimed for has got some solid players, but we want to move past being competitive, and it's going to take a decision by the club, and whether it's at board level or executive level, that we will pay above and maybe well above market price for a specific target or two. And that's really what it comes down to, because every club gets great data from the NRL that helps them to decide the value of players. They get data, without naming the players, they get data that tells them what the top earners are earning, what I think the median price is for specific positions, and they can sort of work out who the players are that are probably getting the money that the NRL lists for the top players. But they don't go in. Clubs will use this to frame their prices for specific players as targets. So clubs aren't going in there blind. And on top of that, they've got an agent who's maybe dictating the price that their client wants. But I think the missing out on players has purely and simply come down to, okay, we're not getting into a bidding war for this player. We're not getting into a bidding war for this player. We're not prepared to go to 4 or 5 years for this contract. Whatever it might be, something hasn't been ideal for us. So we've pulled out of the race for a player, or we've said this is our best offer. And unfortunately, or it's just a fact of life, money talks. Unless you're one of the very, very top teams and you can offer a little bit of something else, whether it's in like something, you know that there are going to be opportunities opened up post-career. They can't actually specifically say it, but you know, if clubs have got that capacity to set people up in post-football, be it in media or investments or a career or what have you, they're the sorts of things that maybe can get players across the line, wanting to play for a certain coach maybe. But ultimately, you're going to attract players with the right money. Look, we'll end up seeing what PNG is able to do when they can offer that much more than everyone else because of the tax incentives. Let's wait and see who they end up recruiting, because I have a pretty good idea that they're going to land some big fish. And the Eels have to get in there before some of those big fish are landed. Anyway, let's move on, John. We spoke quite a bit about the reserve grade. Any final takes you've got on that reserve grade game? Given that they were absolutely massacred by Norths the week before, did you expect them to be able to bounce back like that against the Dragons, albeit that we did have a couple of very strong inclusions in Iongi and Katonga?
Look, the Cup team's been on the up and up for the most part, barring that North Sydney game for about a month now. So I wasn't too surprised to see the turnaround. And, again, it wasn't exactly fluid. Like, there were lots of errors and stops and starts. But the Dragons are a quality team, although there was plenty of talk about the injuries the Dragons have from commentary. Look, I like what I saw from the Eels across the park, Craig. Great to see Araz have a big outing there. Likewise with Moe Al-Madeen. So you're seeing some of those young players being contributors. Like I said, really happy with what I saw from Ryder. I think his trajectory has been positive in the last few weeks, and he's really starting to own the physicality that comes with playing with fully grown men in reserve grade, which is great to see. Tiankin Brown, again, he's putting his hand up for potentially higher honours. And I do think that we can or should see Tiankin being part of that rotating or floating spot or two on the bench in the NRL, where whether it's Saxon Pryke or Tony Mattielli or Tiankin, the player is going to come in and get a couple of games and then be rotated out as they find their feet in the NRL. That's where I'm at with Reggie's. Good win for them. They have a bye now. They're going to get healthier. They continue to try and fight their way back into the top 8. And theoretically, they should only be getting stronger from here with the returns at the NRL level, with the return of someone like Lincoln Fletcher at the lower level there. He creates another option eventually to be in the mix in the spine. So I think that they probably stand to benefit the most in the coming weeks, perhaps even more than the NRL in terms of those players returning. Josh saying that Ryder has to be on the NRL bench next week, surely. I don't think we're quite there. I think we're trending closer to it, though. I made a bold call last year coming out of that game against the Warriors, the grand final qualifier, that Ryder's a fair chance of playing NRL this year. And for a little bit, I was a little concerned that he might not be in that spot, but I think he's really showing some serious strides in the last few weeks. And I think that if he continues, then, like I said, there'll be a cup of coffee at first grade level coming his way sooner rather than later.
I think that he's demonstrating in those New South Wales Cup performances faith in his own ability, which I think is a key component. I don't think we'll see him until, if he plays this year, I don't think we'll see him until towards the very end of the season. I don't think they're going to rush him. I think his next step will be starting roles in New South Wales Cup. I think once you start to see him as a starter, then it might be that he's getting closer to NRL consideration. But I don't think my take is I don't think they'll rush him. And if he does get that cup of coffee, John, I think it's going to be a little espresso towards the end of the season. So now just moving on. I hate to do this. Really hate to do it. Final word on what we witnessed in the NRL last weekend. Notice I'm leaving it right till the back end of the Eels news.
Yeah, look, it is what it is. Well, it is what it was, I suppose, at this point now, in the past tense. The Eels had Melbourne on the ropes at various times in this game. Regardless of what the scoreboard said going into that second half where the Eels were down 10-4 at half-time, they had priority early in the second half. They had the better of the run of play. They generated all the key attacking opportunities, and they just could not or would not. And again, they weren't throwing that game. I'm making a joke there. They just, for whatever reason, couldn't lock in for that. Just the one score they needed, the one score that could have snowballed momentum. And yeah, instead, Melbourne, who have been praised far and wide about them turning, they're back, and they're not back. They might go on and win other games that say they're back. That game that's not Melbourne being back. That was Parramatta dropping the ball over and over. The Eels had them on the ropes, and they let them off. And there's no two ways about it.
I think it was a combination of Parramatta absolutely butchering it and letting them off with that win, but I also think it was a case of their big three doing enough to get them across the line as well, because I thought the rest of the Melbourne team, for the most part, were pretty ordinary. I'm not saying they were diabolical like some of our performances, but I think they would have got... I honestly believe that an informed team would have put Melbourne to the sword in that game. There were just far too many errors. The Eels were invited in plenty of times. It was a case of Melbourne made more negative plays than the Eels, which is quite extraordinary. I think the total number of negative plays was something like 27 to Melbourne and 25 to Parramatta. If we thought the Eels were error-riddled, the Storm managed to outdo us. It's just that some of ours were on the first tackle in the Storm red zone and just were completely infuriating. And if we ever had a chance to beat the Storm, that was in that game. John, I wrote a post this week, a spotlight post, where I've said, okay, we've had the injuries this year. But the other thing is, let's be honest, the roster is not a title challenging roster, and that's with respect to the players. At full strength, we can be competitive, but at full strength, we're probably not going to win a title because we don't have players who fit into that upper echelon. And again, that's not a disrespect to the players. It's just that we have a couple of elite players. We have one or two that are on the verge of being elite, except, well, Junior's winding down his career. Iongi hasn't got there yet. But then what you're talking about is a mix of really inexperienced players and a mix of players who are solid first-grade players. So it's not a knock on them. All teams have those sort of players. It's just those players make up the majority of our team, of our squad. Whereas premiership-winning teams, they can have up to 8 or 10 players who are representative class, being Origin or international, or even in some instances those who have chosen to play international for Tier 2 countries but would be Tier 1 country eligible if they were, say, playing for Australia or New Zealand. So that's the sort of talent that's there. And the errors are what really are causing problems, and the defence is causing problems. But moving past that, it just comes straight down, I believe, to completions, because every time we've completed above 80%, we've won the game. It's like that is the defining mark. And when we completed 79%, guess what? That was the Tigers game. And it just took like one or two errors that nudged it the wrong way, maybe a couple of tough ref calls. But if the Eels had been completing at around 84, 85% in that game, I'd contend that we would have beaten the Tigers. And who knows, like, we were competitive up to a point against against Manly. And even in that loss to the Warriors, John, even though we're looking at a team that looked to be too big, too strong for us, it was 18-14 until Kelma dropped the ball, and then we had the two intercept plays. That's how we got finished off. We got finished off with 3 errors, 3 big errors. What if we'd completed those sets rather than made the errors? Where would that have gone? Could that have built scoreboard pressure? So as far as I'm concerned, John, that game was maybe the worst example of how errors killed us in games this year. It may not have been the number of errors, but it was the when and the where those errors came, and the fact that we could not take advantage of an absolute welter of errors that the Storm made. So I think we'll leave that there. It certainly was a game that drew the ire of a lot of Eels supporters. And maybe it's because our form is fluctuating so wildly, and interestingly, it fluctuates wildly with the completion rates. We can go from completing in 60-odd% up to 91% that we did against the Cowboys. Would we have beaten the Cowboys if we completed at 70-something%? No. The only reason we won was exceptionally high completion rate. So we don't know. We spoke about in the preview what Parramatta is going to turn up. What version of Parramatta is going to turn up? The one that's error-riddled, or the ones that stay focused and complete, get the sets completed and stay in the contest? I don't know. And I think that's probably something that fans are struggling with this year. How can you get hope one week and then have it totally crushed the next? You don't want a roller coaster of hope, crush, hope, crush. And that's what it feels like we're going through, John. That's my final take on that game. It's a game I'd rather put into the back burner. I've had people message me say, why is it the Storm can bring out the worst in us? Well, they do. They just seem like, and I'm sick of the Storm bringing out the worst in us, but it just seems to happen far too often. So let's move on to Origin. What's your take on Moses being selected? Because there's a bit of debate around that. And what's your take on the Fox not being selected?
Look, Fox not getting selected. That some like Laurie Doey's had a couple of interesting picks, but I can cop the Fox not getting picked. I'm not really sure that the rest of the team holds up to some of the scrutiny that it should. But then again, Queensland also had a couple of interesting picks too. So I was saying in chat earlier, I think it was to Jamie, that he was saying he just doesn't have the passion for Origin anymore. And I was like, I feel you, but there is like a weird part of me that's almost bizarrely looking forward to game one because of just how insane some of those picks are in these two teams. But yeah, look, Fox getting overlooked, I'm not upset about that. I don't think it's an unreasonable call. The rest of the backline composition, Crichton very lucky to get in there. Staggs, who I do like, but he's coming off a suspension a couple of weeks there, so that's an interesting call. And then Cooler, who is not a winger, and not really anything about him is a winger. Awesome player, though. Like, I wouldn't have been upset if he was picked in the centres, but I don't know about him on the wing. So, yeah. And then Moses of Cleary, look, Moses is a gun. And people have been up at him about his form this year. He's had a slower start than some other seasons. He was great against Melbourne, clutch against the Cowboys. He deserves his spot. But picking with Cleary is almost a waste of time, honestly, because he's just going to defer to Cleary's primary on-ball play, and we're going to have the same problems we had last time they played together. I'll be surprised if they prove me wrong. Cleary, obviously, true generational club-level player, perhaps the greatest club-level halfback we've ever seen, but just hasn't had it at Origin. So Moses will play, he'll have his moments, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for the Blues.
Yep. Okay. Fair call. And I think when it comes to that, it benefits Parramatta for Moses to be selected. And it feels strange saying that, but I think this year Moses needs Origin. I think he needs to be playing alongside players of that calibre. I think his battery needs to be recharged by playing that elite level of football or alongside elite footballers. Again, I'm not saying this is any way to denigrate the Eels players. I'm just saying I think he's going to benefit by being on that platform. And even if he doesn't get to play the sort of football, John, that you believe he should be able to play if it was him and a different halves partner where Moses got to be the primary playmaker, I still say being in the environment of Origin and being on that platform in a big match is what Mitch Moses needs right now. And hopefully the Blues can deliver so that he experiences winning on the big stage, as it were. As for the Fox, I think a little unlucky there, but it's because he's done well since he's come to Parramatta. Without question, I'm so glad that we ended up with the Fox, not just for his try-scoring ability, but just the intangibles that he brings to the team and that energy and the spirit and what have you. So I'm sure he would have brought that to Origin as well. Maybe the Origin team's the little bit the worse off because they haven't got him there. John, let's wrap up the Eels news by looking at the Eels NRLW players that were in the second Origin team, the New South Wales and both New South Wales and Queensland, although New South Wales wrapping up the series already by taking both of the first two games. What did you think of the performances of the Eels players in that second game?
Yeah, I thought the good game from the Blues. They fought really hard in this one. To take the series at 2-0 is a fair accomplishment. So well done there. They had to fight hard. Queensland didn't give it to them cheaply. But was it 11-6 and 14-10? So that's like two old-fashioned scorelines right there, and probably reflective of the rule set that they're playing in, Craig. We live in the 6-again era on the male side of things, but they play full-on penalties for the ladies, and probably helps the flow of the game a bit more. But in terms of the Blues players, Craig, and obviously there was a couple of Queenslanders for the Eels as well that we'll get to there as well. Abby probably didn't pop in terms of offensive involvement through the series thus far, including in Game 2, but really tidy and defensively has been outstanding. I think that's been, you look at those score lines, 14-10 and what was it, 11, what was that one? Make sure you get that one there, 11-6. Fair chance they don't win those games without some of the clutch tackles she made in the goal line, so that was good to see. And we know at club level she'll be much more better integrated into the attacking structures, because the way Origin works is it tends to be a lot tighter, doesn't it? And fullbacks can suffer with that sometimes if you're not a freak like Jared Hayne, who has dominated the Origin level at fullback because of his unique skill set. But really like what Abby did, Craig, in terms of the other Blue for the Eels. Unfortunately for Kendi, just being stuck on the bench sort of pigeonholed her into a minor role, but she was fiery, brought a lot of energy, which is good to see. And I think she's probably primed for a good year for the Eels. Still got nearly 100 metres off the bench in Game 2, which is really good to see. So she had great energy, great impact, and I think she'll be primed for the Eels.
She's going to bring the energy, she's going to bring the attitude. she's gonna be in the faces of opponents.
Yeah.
She's the sort of player opponents don't like to play against.
Yes. Yeah, Keely Joseph was as advertised, Craig. Got through a mountain of work in defence in a very defensively driven games. Had some nice runs through the ruck. Not a dominant presence in terms of running the ball through the middle, but it was very productive, which is good to see. And then it was great to see in game 2 that the Queenslanders finally realised that it's okay to give Rory Owen some early ball. And she really, blossomed from that and had a really good game. In fact, her battle up against, who was she up against? Was it Surgis she was up against, or Kelly? I think it was Surgis, but I could be wrong. It was a great it was a great to and fro. They had their moments on each other, and a lot of the important exchanges in that game happened down that edge, both offensively and defensively. So it was great to see Rory not just hanging with another great or a contemporary, but getting some big points against her, including scoring a try and nearly a second as well. So, really like what we got through with our girls in Origin. The fact that I think, knock on wood, there's nothing too serious in terms of injuries. I'm sure they're banged up and got lots of niggles because that's essentially their preseason has been State of Origin. But really liked what I saw from all 4 of them, and I think they've obviously got the dead rubber now coming up. The final match that will be played in the Gold Coast Seabus Super Stadium, which will happen on Thursday the 28th, so about a week from now. So they just got to navigate that one in terms of injuries, but they look primed for good seasons. Really nice to see.
And they're now in the second week of the pre-season, I believe, so preparations marching along for the Eels. Finally, I just wanted to mention as well, John, that the Blue and Gold Alliance, the Eels old boys, I shouldn't say old boys because there's now the involvement of women in rugby league, and I know Kennedy Cherrington has started to work with the BGA as well to get the message across to the female players. But they've got their golf day this Friday at Cabramatta, so just shout out to the BGA and hope all goes well for their day out there this week. So, John, that brings us to the end of the Eels news. Have you got a little bit of an interlude for us this week?
Yeah, there was some unfounded reports about Junior being out till round 17. We'll wait for any club confirmation on that before we go into it any further. I do appreciate people in chat mentioning it, but there was some talk about maybe a knee queen out for Junior. But again, we're waiting for an official injury report before I'm committing to any talk about that. So. But again, thanks to chat for pointing it out, and not to say it's not a credible report, but we'll just wait until the club puts it out there one way or the other, because Riles did mention way back earlier in the season that Junior had some sort of abscess in the knee, so certainly there is a potential for a clean out there, but if we get a proper report on that, we'll mention it later on, but otherwise that's probably be for a later podcast, and certainly could throw some interesting selection considerations into that Newcastle game if Junior is out for a couple of weeks, but we have to wait and see.
Okay, I'll see if I can find out anything.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll head towards the intermission. And, of course, it's bye week, and so lots of different fun ways we go here. But when you think of bye as a certified 90s kid, or technically a bicentennial baby, but a 90s kid growing up in my formative years into the 2000s, bye, big NSYNC hit, the era of the boy bands. And so we didn't go directly to NSYNC. This is actually NSYNC tangentially, but one of the great Simpsons episodes, Craig, the Ivan et Niage, the subliminal Navy recruitment song that was happening via the boy band that the Simpsons put on there, which was actually done by the Simpsons. Just maybe made that connection from bye week, bye, NSYNC to the Simpsons. So here's a bit of the best of that song, including.
You can go a tangential link. There,
oh yeah, you don't want to try and understand my mind, mate. It can go in some very interesting directions, but got the subliminal Navy recruitment there on the Simpsons, and some great commentary from Homer.
Even at Niage, you gotta love that crazy chorus.
What does it mean?
It doesn't mean anything. It's like Ramalama Ding Dong or Give Peace a Chance.
And we'll get through the end of the song first. Actually done by NSW as well. They made fun of themselves on the show and then did the song. And a couple of incredible quotes in that episode from the real golden age of The Simpsons. But Marge watching the music video of the boys doing the Even Yet Now song and commenting that none of those women have had 3 kids because they're all, all the background dancers and they all look in great shape. And then when Lisa confronts the Navy recruiter about the subliminal messaging, he mentions the 3 prongs of Navy recruitment: liminal, subliminal, and superliminal. And Lisa's like, "What's superliminal?" And he just goes out the window, "Hey, you, join the Navy." Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. We now press on with NRL news. Just takes on the Origin as a whole across the 2 teams. John, what confused me a little bit, and maybe it doesn't confuse you, I don't understand the omission of Reece Walsh completely by the Queensland team. To me, and I know he's got his knockers, but he's surely in the top 10, if not the top 5 players in the NRL. Like he literally won the premiership for the Broncos last year. If he doesn't play, they don't win. They barely qualify for finals football. He did a Jared Hayne for the Broncos last year. And it's not like that was any sort of flash in the pan season. He's had those sorts of performances for the club time and time again. He's the go-to. He's the player who can change a game.
Yeah,
I think he's made for Origin. And I just don't. I'm glad the Queensland's left him out from a Blues supporter perspective. I just don't understand how they can't even find a spot for him in the squad. Like in the squad, he's not an option. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's no shortage of controversy around both fullback positions because Kalen Ponga winning the one for Queensland, and then Walsh not even being an inclusion on the 6-man bench at Origin. But true for the Blues as well with Tedesco, who was long rumoured to be winning the battle ahead of Edwards, claiming that fullback spot. So, yeah, drama on both sides. And I am surprised that Walsh is a non-inclusion here, given that Kalen Ponga's got the ability to play across 3 different spots. Same too with Walsh. Surely they're better for having both of them in the team. Even if one of them doesn't play because of the way the bench works, you're better off having a Walsh or a Ponga on the bench to be able to throw into the action when needed. I don't know. But like I said, there's some interesting picks on both sides, Craig, because as much as the Blues are copping some flack for picking guys like Kohler on the wing, and then the way their middle forwards are set up is a bit interesting. My brother's not big on Hudson Young getting picked on the edge. He thinks Young's been a bit exposed at Origin level. I don't think he's too unfair about that either. But you got Murray on the bench instead of starting. Yo was so great at prop forward last series, but they're putting back the lock. Victor Radley, Jacob Saifidi. Like, the Blues can do better. And on the flip side, Jojo Fafita was a real left field selection on the wing for the Maroons. They've chosen to go with Sam Walker. I don't think that was controversial. That was probably the more common sense pick there. Thomas Flegler's starting. He's been working his way back from that horrific shoulder injury, but I don't think he's back at full form yet either. They've gone for Max Plaff at lock forward, which, again, not a bad pick here, but it's definitely an interesting selection there. Britton Nakora on the bench, Trent Loiero on the bench, Ezra Mam on the bench, Shibasaki on the bench, Craig, a player that most Broncos fans think is clinging to his spot in first grade right now. But he's on the bench instead of Reece Walsh. So, I don't know. It's
Go figure, because one of them can play multiple positions and the other one doesn't. Well, just go figure.
Yeah, like I said, John, I've almost got a sick interest in this game just to see how weird it can get, because both Daly and Billy have picked odd squads. Like, I don't think they're consensus New South Wales or Queensland squads by any measure.
You mentioned Hudson Young. Here's a weird thing. If it wasn't Hudson Young, I saw his doppelganger at a service station at Northmead on the weekend. Like he was walking through the service station, and there was both this is one of those service stations that's got a McDonald's on one side and a KFC on the other.
The classic,
and it looked like he was maybe coming out of KFC towards maybe parking the car, or he might have been parked the car over at KFC and he's walking over to McDonald's. I couldn't be sure, but I'll tell you what, it was him and a female companion, and if it wasn't Hudson Young, it was a doppelganger. I swear. But like just a weird place to perhaps see him, and maybe that was the case because the Raiders had the bye. So who knows? There could have been any reason for him up in Sydney. When's his contract running, John?
I go to the NRL signings portal, which is always a risk. Let me have a gander. Why are they there? I don't understand. I think he re-signed recently, so no, he hasn't. He is eligible for negotiations in November. There you go.
Well,
2027 contracted.
Well, that maybe puts the cats among the pigeons. Who knows if he was up talking to his agent, or he certainly wouldn't be meeting with a club, John.
No, there's no way that a club would approach a player before November 1 to negotiate about a potential deal. There is absolutely no way.
Not a chance at all. But as I said, if it wasn't him, it was his doppelganger. And I almost, because I was driving out of the service station at this point, so it's like I'm driving past and I'm like, oh, if I wasn't on my way onto the road, I would have probably parked the car and just had a sneaky look to see if it really was him, just out of interest, because he's so far, if it was him, he's just so far away from where you'd expect him to be. And it's not the first time that sort of thing has happened, because I've had some great stories about people that have been seen in certain areas where you think to yourself, oh, okay, this player should not be there, but they are. Anyway, I'm not so sure about, I know it's now an eligibility approved thing, but Victor Radley being selected for New South Wales after having been a player for England. And I know he is Australian, and I know he chose to play for England to honour his father, I think it was. But I wasn't a fan of Origin players being selected who represent other nations. I always found it difficult still with the likes of To'o and Luai playing for other Pacific nations, because I'm still of the firm belief that Origin is part of the process of working towards an Australian jersey. That's how I've always seen it. I've lost interest a little bit in Origin since that seems to have fallen by the wayside. But they're my big takes on it. Is the selection of Victor Radley, not crazy about it. I think he'll play well. It's just the concept of him being eligible now just doesn't sit well with me. And the Reece Walsh, I just don't understand. Okay, let's move on. Walters extended as the Roos coach. Is this just until Ivan Cleary?
Well, Cleary did flag potential interest in representative honours as a coach. So whether it be for New South Wales or Australia, or I guess Queensland, there's nothing stopping you from coaching Queensland technically. There are the same selection criteria imposed upon coaches as they are for players in Origin as a coach?
I wouldn't think so.
It's a heresy, but could a New South Welshman coach Queensland? So I don't know.
I don't think it applies, because you had what's his name, the New Zealand coach. What was his name? That coached Queensland. I'm trying to think of his name now. Was it Malcolm someone?
Um,
I think he was Manly coach. Graham, was it?
Trying to look it up.
He coached.
History
He
of-
was
history
he
of
was a
coaches
coach of
here.
Manly at one stage. He's a Kiwi.
Maybe Jack can help
You
us
have
out
a
here.
list of Manly.
What did you
And
say
I
his name
think
was?
he had some health problems too.
Lowe. They're saying it's Lowe. Graham Lowe.
Yeah, Graham Lowe. Graham Lowe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he was he was Queensland Origin coach at one point.
He was an Origin
he's-
coach there, yeah.
So he was a Kiwi coaching in Sydney, and he became a Queensland Origin coach.
Yeah.
So you tell me, like, it's
Yeah, fair.
yeah.
Fair. But he's not a New South Wales
I
either,
don't think there's.
But
I don't
to
think it's any
get back where we're
different, but
going, look, it's the cushiest job in rugby league, Australian coach. Not that Australia are invincible and unbeatable, but pretty much unless you horrifically butcher the job, you can stick around for pretty much as long as you want. And Walters, he's a guy that is very much a player's coach, like he one of the boys sort of coach, and not an X's and O's guy. At least that's how he comes across based on coverage from Fox Sports. And yeah, it's just a easy appointment there for the ARL for having to overthink it. And like you said, maybe when Ivan finishes up at the end of 27, he might explore that potential job. But yeah, it's not much to report on that one, is there? Like it's probably reflective of the week of news that wasn't, because there isn't a lot of NRL news going around.
Yeah, so let's get on to the other, which is the one of the big moments that came out of the Magic round, which was the injury to Tanner Boyd. And it's a significant one in being an ACL, which basically means he won't be back on the field until around this time next year.
Yeah, 9 months at the very best, and it's more likely to be close to a year.
Yeah, and it comes on the back of Metcalf signing with the Dragons. So Metcalf has the rest of this year. He's not been selected for this week, but will likely be selected the following week.
Webster, eh?
But, yeah,
that's a message if I ever saw one. That's some Ivan Cleary, are you on the bus energy right there.
Yes. So,
but the footy gods, mate, they're a fickle pantheon, aren't they? The Warriors, I mean, they managed to, with the benefit of some pretty interesting calls, they got the. I'd never think, you never really hear the sentence the Warriors get all the good calls, but they got all the good calls in that game. But they crushed the Broncos in spite of losing Tanner Boyd early in that contest. And look, this probably does move the needle negatively for them in the context of winning the premiership. But this is such a weird season that maybe they can still continue to go on their run, even in spite of losing Boyd. Who knows? But like I said, ruthless from Webster in that message he sent to Luke Metcalf immediately, saying, "You're not good enough this week. You didn't want to be in, so you're not in." But it'd be interesting to see if they drop a game or two. Does that change? That's always the real barometer of where a player stands. Is once the winning stops, do they come back into the equation?
Yeah. All right, John. A quick yes or no. Are the Warriors a genuine chance of winning the title this year?
I still think Penrith, in terms of like their form on any given game, are probably pretty clearly a cut above most teams. But we saw them against the Dogs, and we even saw them the last couple of weeks against Manly and even against the Dragons. They're starting to falter a little bit. So I think the Warriors are still behind Penrith, but they're definitely a chance. Like, definitely a real chance. They've got a bit of, assuming that the injuries don't pile up from here, they've got enough of those intangibles that you want to see from a team to make a push, where players are, you're seeing Jackson Ford, a guy that's been either a journeyman or just a replacement level player, having a career year. It's like Canberra last year. When you have players punching above their weight and having outlier seasons concurrently together, it turns a otherwise average squad into a really, really good squad. And Canberra won the minor premiership last year, and while they bombed out the finals, they could have won the premiership if they'd stayed in the hunt without losing those back-to-back games. And it's true for the Warriors here now too, where they've got a stack of guys having career seasons. And, in 18 months from now, they might be just middle of the table again. But right now they've got a stack of guys doing their jobs at a high level, and that goes a long, long way in a weird competition or a weird year in the competition like we have in 2026.
Yeah. I personally, John, I think they're an outstanding chance of playing in the grand final, which means that they're a good chance of having a shot at winning. And I can't get over the what we saw from them in the way of the power and the pace that they played at against the Eels. And I know it was us, but it's something they do on a regular basis. Just seeing it live reinforced it to me. They're a big side. They're a fast side. There's a lot to like about them. Any other takes that you've got from Magic Round, what you saw? There was a part of me that was disappointed that the Panthers could not really put the Dragons to the sword, because I thought it was going to be. I wanted to see JC lose his mind even more.
Yeah, look.
Instead, he had a post about the Eels. So that, and I don't want to see other supporters post about the Eels. It's for us to post about, not them. And we don't need people imitating them. We just need people coming up with their own original ideas about our club. Don't leave it for others to mock us. So, and I don't want us to be mocked by our own people, but I'm just saying, JC, keep to your own mob, not us.
Yeah, look, I mentioned it before, but Penrith faltering a little bit. I say faltering so far as they only scored 28-6 or a 28-6 win. But that's been a trend for them for the last couple of weeks, where they probably haven't gone off the job as much that you would expect them to. Same was true of that Manly game where they squeaked out the win and were like comfortably better than Manly, but just didn't put them away. And probably a bit of a similar thing here too, where obviously the gulf in talent between the two rosters, between the Sea Eagles and the Dragons, was what played out on the scoreboard in terms of not putting the team away. But beyond that, the Dogs are who we thought they are. They got, if anything, Cronulla let them off the hook in the second half. That was at 32 points to blot at half time, and the Sharks didn't come out the play in the second half. 30-6. 30-6. They got it right the third time. They didn't come out the play in the second half. Dolphins too good for a Rabbitohs team that got a couple of injuries in the game, most notably Latrell with his back, but no surprises there. Manly continue their timing-based run where they got the Tigers of all the injuries. They put them away. West were pretty ordinary in this one. Manly were good. Torrid game between the Roosters and the Cowboys with a bit of controversy around some of the sin bins there. I think the Ruben Cotter one in particular was the controversial one, not so much the Matthew Lodge one. Obviously, our Eels going down there. Newcastle was second half blitz. Titans put up a bit of a fight for about 40 minutes, but just didn't have enough in the tank to go against the Knights. The Warriors, as you mentioned, Craig, they embarrassed the Broncos. So I saw in chats people talking about it was good to see the Ponies getting booed in their own stadium. The Warriors also hitting them with the na, hey, goodbye. So good to see it's not just a Parramatta thing to deal with that one. But I thought Magic Round was a bit of a bludger, mate. I don't know. The charm is, at least for mine. Maybe people that go there love it and they got an opinion contrary to mine. But I hate seeing the field chopped up after 3 games, and the running repairs have to go on to keep the facilities barely at NRL level, the playing facilities that is. The Eels obviously haven't had Magic Round be a happy hunting ground, which doesn't help. It would certainly, at least subconsciously, colour my opinion, I guess, Craig. But I don't know. It just I'm not seeing the fun. Like it's just another round of football.
No.
And
I think they were bludger games, John. Apart from say the Roosters and the Cowboys game, but one-sided games. But that's typical of the NRL at the moment, isn't it? So Not really a surprise that one team could just, whether it be the circumstances in the game or a mismatch, whatever the NRL want to tell us is the reason for the one-sided the lopsided games. But once more, as Eels support, maybe we'd feel different about it if our Eels were winning up at Magic Round. But
Maybe.
as Gold calls it, schoolies for dads, and it was probably a case of, for a number of people, too much alcohol that was consumed over the weekend. The NRL has since announced that they've locked in Brisbane for the next 5 years for Magic Round.
End of 32, I think it is, going through to now.
So it's probably the right location for it.
There
I'm
was
sure that
some thought to maybe go to Perth, I guess, to help with that expansion, getting a bit more boots on the ground and a bit of interest in their potential support, like wider supporter base as a second team. But Brisbane, it's been a good venue for Magic Round. The charm of Magic Round, I think it was fun as like a do it once in a while sort of thing, but every year, and maybe there's some talk about expanding it to other venues potentially. No, it just quarantine it to the one round if you're going to do that. And then look, I would also argue that if you're a Queensland team, or at least maybe not the Cowboys, but the other teams, you should not be able to have an away game at Magic Round. That's ridiculous. Getting an extra home game is such a huge benefit. And I know that, don't get me wrong, I understand that the Titans lost and that the Brisbane Broncos lost. It's not a guaranteed slam dunk win. But it is a significant benefit on the schedule. So
yeah, I agree, and I think the NRL probably are in a situation where it's look. I don't know whether you can equate it to the Eels should have an advantage playing Penrith twice at our venue, or the Tigers twice because the Panthers chose to use.
Well, I mean that is circumstance, isn't it? Like there is roster.
That's what I was going to say. This is that circumstance, and the other is the Tigers' choice to take the game there. This is an NRL decision where they could look at that draw and go, you know what, this shouldn't be a Queensland team home game, most particularly, but the Broncos and the Dolphins really,
who's literally playing the home
ground.
Yeah. Obviously the Gold Coast is
the Titans and the Cowboys.
Yeah, Titans. It's an hour down the road. The Cowboys, they're actually genuinely out of the area, so I can cop that. But the two Brisbane located teams, it's ridiculous. So, yeah. On that note, there were a couple of questions in chat. I know this is going back, Neil, but I did see your question. He wanted to gauge our thoughts on the junior city versus country matches and how the Eels in those various games fared in our estimations, Craig. And on that note too, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a big write-up for, one second, make sure I don't butcher this, for, where is he? Talon Rosati, who starred in the Kings game in the GPS at Inside Centre. So he had a big game against Joey's, I think it was. So well done to Talon there. But in terms of those city versus country games, Craig, did you catch all of them? And if so, what were your takeaways for the Parramatta Eels involved?
No, only little bits of highlights and what have you. So I don't think I could comment in a way that I normally do with the junior reps, simply because I just didn't have the circumstance to be able to sit and watch those games due to some other responsibilities that I have. And anyway, look, I think what we can be proud of is the fact that we had so many players that were selected. I know that when it comes, there was quite a lot that was written about players like Isabella Bell in the girls and Lauren Masiasiu, who I think was player of the match in the 16s with the boys. We've got players who
in the 18s as well.
Yep, we've got players who really have the potential to be either very good NRLW or NRL stars, but it's still potential. I think, given the sheer numbers that were acknowledged in the girls, I think we are going to see, and the fact that the NRLW is still a relatively new competition, relatively young competition, we are going to see a lot of those girls play NRLW. Hopefully, the majority with the Eels. We might not be able to keep them all simply because of the sheer numbers that are coming through. But we know that there was, from our chat with Steve Georgalis, something like 12, wasn't it, the Tasha Gale girls that are going to be elevated to the New South Wales Women's Premiership team or squad. That will give you an idea about how the under 19s with the girls, isn't it? Under 17s and 19s with the girls, 16s and 18s with the boys. Yeah. So that how the under 19 girls are tracking, and you've also got the evidence that because there's players playing for both city and country, that recruitment has come far and wide in our pathways, not just the local players. Yeah. But in terms of being able to provide a breakdown of all of the individual performances, I couldn't do it because I haven't had the time to look over the tape of those games. So, John, did you get to see anything where you could?
I only saw a little bit. Yeah, I know. Cyrus had a very good game, obviously for the 18s, and then Lorima CSU, who was at fullback, I think, had a great game in the 16s.
Yeah,
so,
he was.
And then Neil was saying that he thought that Sarah Almadine was unlucky not to be best on field for the girls in the junior bracket game, and not surprised to hear that she was awesome for the Eels throughout the year. And it's always tough to crack those the player of the game honours in the rep setting, because there's people tend to key in on certain positions primarily. Obviously the spine gets a lot of weighting there, but a lot of good efforts from the Eels across the park, and unfortunately I can only comment on the fellas side of things there. We mentioned that's pretty much the final game for some of those players, especially in the junior side of those two teams. They'll go to schoolboy and schoolgirl honours, obviously too, but as Eels and Eels representatives, they're getting parked now for the rest of the year, while for the elder players, the elder prospects there, they've got a chance to go through to obviously Jersey Flegg New South Wales Cup already, and maybe even further beyond that later in the year, who knows. But for the women too, it's the what is it? It's not Harvey Norman's now. It's just the New South Wales Women's Premiership.
New South Wales Women's Premiership. And John, did trigger my memory. I have a feeling that Sarah Alamadine is young. With that she's 16 this year, not 17 this year. So that not only made her young for the Eels team, but young also
for the representative squad too.
For the representative. So as you said, she did really, really well this year. Just plays a very powerful back rower's role, and she's so that there's the three of them that have been in the pathways. So you've got Moe, who's now playing New South Wales Cup. You've got what was her younger brother's name that's now
Zane.
Playing with the Bulldogs. He's the half. Zane, that's it. So he's run around for the Bulldogs now. And then Sarah, who's making every post a winner in the girls' elite pathways. So it'll be interesting to see. I think her ceiling might be quite high, to be honest, John. Mm-hmm. Given that, as I said, I think she's 16 this year. I might be able to get a message from the family that might be able to let me know whether I'm right or wrong on that. I just have it in the back of my head that she's only that age. But yeah, John, there's like so many of the players there that what was it? Something like eight in one of the girls' teams, 9 in the other. Like that's extraordinary. When you think about that level of domination by one club in the teams, it's phenomenal. But yeah, I couldn't do justice to talking about how they performed if I've only just seen the highlights. So there's so much more. The highlights, they're showing you the try moments. It's not telling you
so much in between. Exactly.
the tough yards that players are doing with their hit-ups, the defensive
tackles.
work, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, on that note,
any other questions or
no,
any other late breaking news?
No breaking news as far as I can tell. got down to the COE on Friday and had a chance to go to the Paradise Cafe and say hello to the coach and some other players, which is great. Good work there, mate, and hope you had a good time there. And
so who got to do that?
one of our chatters, was down at the COE, so he had a chance to enjoy the Paradise Cafe and say hello to the coaching staff, including Rolsey and some of the players, before they headed out to Brisbane. So good on you, mate. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully there's some better memories to be built at the COE moving forwards as the Eels course correct. But
and a shout out to Harry. Now there's a number of Harrys that listen, but Harry, who I met the other week down at the COE, might have been last week. That was, I think, I'm not sure whether that was his first experience down there at the COE and at the cafe, but it's great to see the people that do get down there and enjoy not just the Paradise Cafe there, but just the facilities and being able to watch in comfort like you can now. The tough years that we had to go through, John, standing on the barren hill at Richie Benno Oval to going and running, standing on the running track, especially during the pre-season.
The reflective glare on the run track,
on that run track. I used to be hanging out for them to train on the other field, because then we could go and stand under the shelter of the little amenities block that was there, because that wasn't part of their official player area. So you could go and stand and get a bit of shelter, whether it be the sun or the rain or what have you. And then before all the COE was built at Kellyville, just watching in all sorts of conditions. And I'm not sure what was the toughest, the really hot days or the days where it was raining and idiot like me would stand there under an umbrella with the horizontal rain falling and just soak into the skin. I'd stand there and I'd think, I am an idiot. Like, what is the benefit of being here, of watching it? It's just what you do. Yep. It's just what you do. Exactly. But now, luxury, John, up there at the COE.
Yep.
So don't forget, anyone that does come up there, just come over today.
Yes.
Yes.
And don't forget, if you are a PLC member, you can use your member card inside the cafe as well and get some benefits there too. So
get your member discount there, and of course they've got an Eels shop there as well for the merch. I know, John, you bought some merch when you were up there.
Off the discount
recently.
I bought a hoodie. Yeah,
the discount rack. Yep.
And it was a nice pickup because you get your membership discount and I think the membership discount and the rack discount as well. So no, it was a good pickup there. But on that note, mate, I think we'll start wrapping. It's a bye week, Craig. We've managed to get up for 2 hours, so we've done all right. So
big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise.
But
of course, there was some big talking
points
points
we've got
there.
to think of the fact that there's no
preview podcast.
There's no longer a podcast, and we haven't got a preview podcast because we haven't got any grades playing this week. So this is it, John. This is what. Let's go for another hour.
Oh God. No. But yeah, on that note, we'll start wrapping things up. You guys have been fantastic. Obviously, some complex issues we're still touching on in terms of the recruitment and retention there. And like we mentioned, we're going to keep talking about it, but there's only so far you can go before you keep going in on itself and going full Ouroboros, the worm eating its own tail sort of stuff. When there is a notable signing or there is any sort of change in that course we're talking about, we'll be all over it. Don't you worry. But until then, mate, I think we'll sign off for the rest of the week. We'll be back next Tuesday. Yes, we will see everyone then. And, of course, shout out to our sponsor, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And, of course, the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And if you want to jump on board as a sponsor, just let us know. And, as I always say, John, go you mighty Eels, Para proud.